So I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I was looking down at all these swarms of people picking through these big, tall, steamy piles of trash. And the smell was ripe, and the sound, the roar of the trucks and the people yelling, it was just a full-on assault on your senses from on top of this cliff's edge. All of a sudden, an old truck rolls up behind me. It's piled high with plastic scraps. There's a teenage girl sitting on top of the pile, and she's kind of holding everything together. Out from the driver's seat steps a woman named Miriam. She's about 5 feet tall, is wearing a dirty flannel shirt. Her hand feels like cured leather when I shake it. She walks over to me and she says that she's there to sell plastic at a nearby recycling plant. And then she says, very casually actually, she says, "And if they knew I was here, they would kill me." You see, Miriam is a scavenger. She's a professional trash collector in Guatemala City's landfill. And the landfill is totally dominated by gangs, by organized crime. Those gangs have a very simple rule, and that rule is, you sell to me at the price I set, or I kill you. And these gangs, they make good on their threat. In fact, Miriam's husband had been shot. He was paralyzed. That's why she works with her daughter. Miriam had to shave her daughter's head and dress her as a man to protect her from the gangs of rapists that prowl the landfill. So I'm listening to this. I'm listening to Miriam's story, and it's heavy stuff, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it's hard to hear. It's hard to listen to. And in the middle of this conversation, a phone rings, and she reaches into her coat pocket, and she pulls out a smartphone, and she rips off a text message like some 14-year-old girl you'd meet in the shopping mall or something, and then just puts the phone away, says, "Excuse me, sorry, thank you very much," and turns back to the conversation. She didn't seem to think anything of it, really, but to me, it was so bizarre. Something in that, it just really struck me, that, it's such a bizarre puzzle, that in one hand, you have this lady who has access to this super futuristic technology. We all kind of take it for granted, but it wasn't that long ago when this was someone's Star Trek fantasy, right? But then on the other hand, she has, literally in her other hand, she has this rusty hook that she uses to pick through garbage at the same time. Now, I think that Miriam's life and Miriam's story represents the fundamental paradox of the modern world. And that is grandiose, I know, but that's what I think. I think this is the central issue that underpins so many others. Because if you think about it, how is it that someone like Miriam, who's at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the economic pyramid, how is it that she can have something like a smartphone, but at the same time, millions of people who live like Miriam live in communities that don't even offer them a shred of dignity that they deserve as a human being? They're communities so dysfunctional, so full of violence, so lacking in hope. It's a bizarre puzzle. And I think ultimately it has to do with technology, but not as traditionally understood. You see, I think Miriam's paradox, I call it Miriam's paradox because she taught it to me, right? Miriam's paradox represents two worlds of technology. One is physical and one is social. One progresses, one does not. Now, it may seem strange to call these things social technologies, I'm talking here about law and governance and the institutions and rules that make social life possible. All the things you might think of when you think of politics and organization, right? But ultimately, social technologies are technology. Law and governance shares the exact same essence. It shares its essence with computers and cameras and smartphones and everything else that's such a part of the modern world. Now, how is that so? Technology is a programming of nature. That's its heart. Technology takes some kind of natural phenomenon, whether it's gravity, whether it's electricity, whatever, and it directs it towards some kind of purpose. It programs nature by taking some kind of process and putting it towards a goal that the human sets, the creator of the technology sets for that piece of tech. Now, you can see this very easily in something simple like a flashlight. The flashlight takes chemical and physical processes. It channels the electricity generated by the battery. It reaches the light bulb. The light bulb is there to generate a beam of light towards the goal of seeing in the dark. Right? It's programming of nature all the way down. This is the power of Mother Nature in your hand, but structured by human creativity. Now, it's harder to see, but this is exactly the same thing that happens in social techs, in law and governance. Social technologies are the ways that we organize ourselves. They're the rules and processes and all of those norms and things that make social cooperation possible. Some social techs are really trivial, right? Drive on the right side of the road, drive on the left side of the road, doesn't really matter. Some are really important, innocent until proven guilty, universal suffrage, right? But ultimately, all these things are ways of programming human behavior towards the goal of whatever organization we're talking about. And of course, organizations have different goals. Whole Foods doesn't have the same programming as an army, right? But that's what's at the bottom. In effect, we program ourselves with social technologies. And I know it sounds kind of creepy to say we program ourselves, but that's what's going on here. eBay's reputation system, democracy, corporate hierarchy, all of these things are ways of structuring human behavior towards some kind of social goal. Since we are part of nature, that also means it's a programming of nature. So Miriam's paradox brings us to this weird double standard. On the one hand, we have physical technology and social technology, and we treat them very, very differently. Now, in physical technology, we have startup culture. Startup culture is bold, it's creative, it's adventurous, it's constantly striving for the new, it's constantly searching for ever better ways of building better technology. It runs on experimentation. It runs on this process of entrepreneurial trial and error. On the other hand, in social technology, we have politics. Politics is slow. It tends to be very divisive, very negative. It's not very creative. It's almost completely opposed to experimentation. And I mean, really, if many special interests had their way, nobody anywhere ever would try anything new for all eternity, right? Because anything new is a threat to what already exists. This is what we see with Lyft and Uber and here in Austin and all around the world, really. So, they say you should work on what keeps you up at night, what the question that torments you. And the question that bothers me every day, that I think about every day is, what if we could innovate with the same intensity, the same effectiveness that we do in physical technology, right? But in social tech instead. In other words, what if politics could progress at the pace of technology? I think this is possible, but it requires three big things. The first thing is to acknowledge that law and governance is technology. It might seem trivial, it might seem like a word game, but it's not. This is the leap that makes all of this, the rest of this possible. Politics is no longer this big, monolithic, untouchable, elite thing that no one can do anything about and just kind of floats up there. It's just social tech. It's just another world of technology. And everyone knows technology can be innovated in. I mean, that's what it's there for. And it's a collaborative project that everyone can be involved in. Technology is very collaborative. So we take social tech off its pedestal, and it's there to be innovated in. The second thing we need to do is to commit to extreme humility in anything that we do in social tech. Why? Because social problems are just insanely complicated. Once you get a window into social problems, you see, the orphans and the corruption and the police that don't show up and the hospitals that aren't built and the roads that aren't paved and the elections that don't work and all the special interests and the laws and the regulations and the taxes. It's just a nightmare of systemic complexity. It's this big ball of things. There are no silver bullets. Someone is lying to you if they're selling you a silver bullet. Ignore them. It is so maddeningly complex that you have to be humble. But the good news is that all three of these things, including the humility, we can take directly from startup culture. To get to innovation in social tech, we need to build something analogous to startup culture, but in social tech, in politics. Implicit in startup culture is a philosophy, and that philosophy basically says we're really, really uncertain about the future, we don't really know what's going to happen, so we need lots of people trying lots of new things all over the place. Why? Because we don't know who's going to be right, and so we have to have this big process of entrepreneurs trying new things. That's based on humility. The heart of that is on humility in the face of complexity, especially looking into the future. So we have recognize politics as technology, commit to extreme humility. The last thing we need is some practical way of actually doing this in the real world. What does startup culture in social tech look like? I think this is possible, but using a tool called startup cities. Startup cities are small, autonomous municipalities that are there. They're designed from the very beginning to pilot new approaches to human community, new approaches to social technology, new ways of organizing ourselves. And of course, I mean, that's a big category. You can, in principle, you could have improvements in urban design, in infrastructure, in dispute resolution, in security, in taxation, in administration, in anti-corruption and transparency. All of these things can be improved upon, but we need a vehicle, we need something analogous to a startup company to go and try them out. And this is exactly where startup cities come in. Now, how feasible is this? How feasible is it to either start new communities from scratch that have enough legal and political autonomy to try out new approaches to organizing ourselves, or to use existing communities to try out new ways of organizing ourselves? In fact, it's extremely feasible. Why? Because every year, all around the world, new municipalities are incorporated just to accommodate population growth and for all other kinds of reasons. And all around the world, nations build special zones, special economic zones, universities with regulatory concessions, import-export processing zones. I mean, you can really run down a nerdy rabbit hole with all of these kinds of things, right? But the point is all of these small units are there, small units with some degree of autonomy. We don't need anything new to do this. All we need to do is to expand the scope that these zones enjoy and these municipalities enjoy to go and try out ever new things and push out that frontier in social technology. Now, this is a broad outline of a very big idea. Come to the Sprout, we can talk, we can answer your questions and all. But I think most of all, how I want to leave this is that, human creativity is the ultimate resource. And what is so sorely lacking in complex problems in social technology is human creativity, addressing these problems systematically as fast as possible, rapidly, using cities. Cities localize that failure, but they can grow to accommodate millions if it works. They compete with one another already. We can do it. But the point is that startup cities are not a final answer. They're not the final word on anything. They're a system for searching for answers. That, to me, is most inspiring of all. Why? Because that's the quest. That's the calling. The constant fight against our own ignorance, against our own limitations. We have done that. We have unleashed that in physical technology, and social technology is the next frontier for us to go and try this. Thank you very much.